Right now, as you're watching this, thousands of seniors across America are opening letters that will change everything about their retirement. The checks they've counted on for years, checks they've earned through decades of hard work, are being reduced, and in some cases, stopped completely. This isn't a rumor or a scare tactic. It's happening under a set of little-known provisions that have been quietly affecting retirees since 1983. The Windfall Elimination provision and the government pension offset, two obscure rules most people have never heard of, are slashing Social Security benefits for over 2.8 million Americans. If you worked in a job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, like teaching, firefighting, or state government work, you could be losing up to $500 every single month. That's $6,000 a year taken from benefits you believed were guaranteed. But here's what makes this even more urgent. New enforcement actions and policy interpretations are expanding who gets affected. The system you paid into your entire working life has fine print that's costing seniors their financial security, and most don't realize they're at risk until it's too late. Let me tell you something that most people don't understand about Social Security. It's not as simple as working your whole life and getting what you're owed. There are hidden traps built into the system, and they're catching millions of Americans off guard every single year. These aren't new rules that just appeared overnight. They've been sitting in the background for over 4 decades, quietly reducing or completely eliminating benefits for hardworking Americans who thought they did everything right. The reality is that our Social Security system has loopholes and penalties that feel more like punishments than fair policies, and if you've worked certain jobs during your career, you might be walking straight into one of these traps without even knowing it. The two main culprits destroying retirement plans across America are called the Windfall Elimination provision and the government pension offset. Now, I know those sound like boring government terms that don't mean much, but trust me when I say these provisions have real power to devastate your retirement income. The Windfall Elimination provision, or WEP as it's commonly called, was created back in 1983 as part of broader Social Security reforms. The government's reasoning was that some people were getting what they considered an unfair advantage, collecting full Social Security benefits on top of pensions from jobs where they didn't pay into Social Security. So Congress decided to create a formula that would reduce Social Security benefits for these workers. Sounds reasonable on paper, right? But here's the problem. This provision doesn't just make a small adjustment. It can slash your monthly Social Security check by as much as half of your pension amount, up to a maximum reduction that changes every year. For 2025, that maximum reduction is over $580 per month. That's nearly $7,000 a year in benefits you've lost, money you were counting on to pay for groceries, medication, utilities, and everything else you need to live with dignity in retirement. Who does this affect? Well, if you spent any part of your career working as a teacher in a public school system, a firefighter, a police officer, or any state or local government employee where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, you're likely affected. Even if you worked in the private sector for most of your life and paid into Social Security for decades, those years working in public service can trigger the Windfall Elimination provision and dramatically reduce your benefits. Think about that for a moment. You might have worked 30 years in jobs where Social Security taxes came out of every paycheck, building up what you thought would be a solid retirement benefit. Then, you spent 10 years as a teacher or working for your local government, earning a modest pension. Now, instead of getting the full Social Security benefit you earned from those 30 years of contributions, the government cuts it down because of that government pension. It doesn't matter that you worked hard in both careers. It doesn't matter that your government pension might be small. The formula just sees that pension and automatically reduces your Social Security, sometimes by hundreds of dollars, every single month. But wait, because it actually gets worse. The government pension offset, or GPO, is the second provision, and this one targets spousal and survivor benefits. Here's how this works, and I want you to really pay attention because this catches so many people by surprise. If you're receiving a pension from a government job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, and you're also eligible for Social Security benefits based on your spouse's work record, The government pension offset will reduce those spousal or survivor benefits by 2/3 of your government pension amount. Let me break that down with real numbers so you can see how devastating this is. Let's say you worked as a teacher for 30 years and you're receiving a pension of $2,500 per month. Your spouse worked in the private sector their entire career and paid into Social Security, building up a benefit of $2,000 per month. When your spouse passes away, you should be eligible for survivor benefits based on their work record, right? Under normal circumstances, you'd receive your spouse's full Social Security benefit of $2,000 per month. But because of the government pension offset, Social Security takes 2/3 of your teacher's pension, that's $1,000, and subtracts it from your survivor benefit. So instead of getting $2,000 per month, you'd only get $1,000. And in some cases, if your pension is large enough, the offset can eliminate your spousal or survivor benefits entirely. You get absolutely nothing from your spouse's lifetime of Social Security contributions, even though they paid into the system for 40 or 50 years. The emotional toll this takes on people is heartbreaking. Imagine losing your spouse and then discovering that the financial security you thought you'd have through their Social Security benefits has been wiped out by a rule you never knew existed. Widows and widowers across this country are facing this reality every day. They're struggling to make ends meet on a single income when they thought they'd have their spouse's Social Security to help them through. And here's what makes this even more frustrating. This provision disproportionately affects women. Why? Because women are more likely to have worked in teaching and other public service jobs that didn't participate in Social Security. They're also more likely to be the surviving spouse since women typically live longer than men. So the government pension offset is hitting retired women especially hard, leaving them in financial distress during what should be their golden years. Now you might be wondering why these provisions exist in the first place. The government's argument is that they're trying to prevent people from getting a windfall, hence the name Windfall Elimination Provision. The theory is that Social Security benefits are calculated using a formula that gives lower-income workers a higher percentage of their earnings back in retirement. If you had some years where you didn't pay into Social Security, the system might see you as a lower earner and give you a better benefit rate than you deserve. The Windfall Elimination Provision is supposed to correct that by adjusting your benefit calculation to account for your government pension. Similarly, the government pension offset exists because Social Security spousal and survivor benefits were designed to help people who didn't work or had low earnings. If you have a government pension, the thinking goes, you're not in that category, so your spousal benefits should be reduced. But here's the major flaw in this logic. These provisions don't distinguish between someone with a massive government pension and someone with a modest one. The formulas apply across the board, often penalizing middle-class workers who split their careers between public and private sector jobs. These aren't wealthy people trying to game the system. These are teachers, firefighters, and public servants who dedicated their lives to serving their communities, and now they're being punished for it in retirement. The impact of these provisions extends far beyond just the individual retirees affected. Families are struggling because their parents or grandparents are receiving less income than expected. Some seniors are being forced to go back to work in their 70s or 80s because they can't afford to live on their reduced benefits. Others are making impossible choices between paying for prescription medications and buying food. The stress and anxiety of financial insecurity in retirement is affecting people's health and well-being. And what's particularly cruel about this situation is that many people don't find out about these reductions until they're already retired, and it's too late to do anything about it. They might have made different career choices if they'd known how severely their Social Security would be impacted. They might have saved more aggressively or delayed retirement. But nobody explained these provisions to them when they were making those critical life decisions. The information isn't prominently displayed. It's buried in complex Social Security regulations that most people never read until they're filing for benefits. There's been growing momentum in Congress to repeal or reform these provisions, and that's actually good news. Legislation called the Social Security Fairness Act has been introduced multiple times with bipartisan support. This bill would completely eliminate both the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, restoring full Social Security benefits to the millions of Americans currently affected. In recent years, this legislation has gained more co-sponsors than ever before, showing that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle recognize how unfair these provisions are. However, despite strong support, the bill faces significant obstacles. The main concern is cost. Repealing these provisions would increase Social Security spending by billions of dollars over the next decade. With Social Security already facing long-term funding challenges, some legislators are hesitant to add more strain to the system. There's also the question of how to pay for these changes without cutting other benefits or raising taxes. These are legitimate policy debates, but while Congress deliberates, millions of seniors continue to suffer from reduced benefits month after month, year after year. What makes the situation even more complex is that the enforcement and interpretation of these provisions has actually become stricter in recent years. Social Security Administration staff are being trained to identify cases where these offsets should apply, and they're conducting more thorough reviews of pension income. Some retirees who were receiving full benefits for years are suddenly being notified that their benefits are being reduced because the Social Security Administration discovered a government pension they didn't previously know about. In some cases, they're even demanding repayment of benefits going back several years, claiming the person was overpaid. Imagine being in your 80s and receiving a letter saying you owe Social Security tens of thousands of dollars because of benefits you received in good faith years ago. The emotional and financial stress this creates is enormous, and it's happening to more people as the Social Security Administration increases its oversight efforts. The geographical impact of these provisions is also worth understanding because they don't affect all states equally. States like California, Texas, Ohio, Illinois, and Massachusetts have large numbers of public employees who don't participate in Social Security, which means these states have hundreds of thousands of residents dealing with WEP and GPO reductions. In some communities, particularly those with many teachers and public safety workers, these provisions are affecting a significant portion of the retired population. Local economies feel the impact too, because when retirees have less money to spend, local businesses suffer. The ripple effects go far beyond just the individuals directly affected. If you're wondering whether you might be subject to these provisions, there are some clear warning signs. First, if you receive a pension from any job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, you're potentially affected by the windfall elimination provision. This includes pensions from state and local government jobs, some federal jobs if you were employed before 1984, and even some jobs with foreign employers. Second, if you're counting on receiving Social Security benefits based on your spouse's work record and you have a government pension, the government pension offset will likely reduce or eliminate those benefits. The key factor is whether Social Security taxes were withheld from your paycheck in that job. If they weren't, these provisions probably apply to you. It's absolutely critical to understand your situation before you retire so you can plan accordingly. The Social Security Administration has calculators on their website that can give you an estimate of how these provisions might affect your benefits, and it's worth taking the time to run those numbers and see where you stand.